Hello, my name's Nissa and welcome to a Wild Earth travel presentation on the Antarctic Peninsula. Today we're chatting to Australian-based business development manager Neil, who has recently been to the White Continent, exploring the peninsula on the Sylvia Earle. I hope you enjoy the presentation.
All righty. So the reasons to come small ship cruising with Wild Earth Travel. Well over 20 years experience, in fact, nearly 30. We work with over 120 ship operators, which is probably one of the largest in the Southern Hemisphere, and have access to over 250 ships globally and nearly over 1,600 itineraries now. So essentially, it's your one-stop shop for your largest range of expedition and small ship cruises anywhere in the world. Where's our speciality? Well, the polar regions, and Antarctica being one of those. So let's start with sort of a quick intro to small ship cruising and expedition cruising to Antarctica, and showing you where vast majority of the trips travel to. So about 98% of the cruises to Antarctica leave from Ushuaia, which is the southernmost city in South America. It's actually on an island of Tierra del Fuego in South America. So probably closer to Chile than Argentina. But that's where the most of the ships go from. The reason being, it's only a 2-day crossing to get between those 2 points there that you can see. And it gives you a good chance too, if you wanted to go further afield, to visit the Falkland Islands and the history there, and out to South Georgia with the huge colonies of king penguins and the fantastic mountain scenery there. So that's the prime reason why most of the ships go from there, because it's the shortest crossing time, and it's between 2 days to 3 days depending on the ship. There are other itineraries that go from the south of New Zealand and from Hobart, but you'll learn about them on another day. But let's talk about my trip that I've done just recently. I traveled down to Antarctica and did a peninsula cruise with Aurora Expedition at the beginning of the season. So I traveled out in late October, early November, and it was a fantastic time to do that, and I'll explain why in a minute. But you always start in the port town of Ushuaia, which is a ski resort in the winter, sorry. And then in the summer, it is the main town where you'll see multiples of ships heading to Antarctica. Even though there's probably about 40, 50 different ships traveling to Antarctica, you will see maybe 3 or 4 at any one time in port. And then you won't see them again. Well, you may see one ship if you're lucky down there, because they all talk to each other and make sure they keep away from each other so that you can view the pristine environment. We started with a cruise in the Beagle Channel, hopefully to see the fantastic ranges in the background. Very proud Argentinians. They have their flags everywhere they can, primarily because it's so close. Well, basically, where we're looking at there is Chile, so they want to make sure they keep that there. And that's when we got our first wildlife spots. So if you have a quick look at this photo, you'll see dotted throughout the rocks. They're hard to find, but there's fur seals there galore. We were lucky enough on this trip to see a leopard seal as well, parked up in the middle of all the fur seals. Sorry I didn't get a good shot of it, but he was about 5 times bigger than these seals. But our morning started with this beautiful. We stay up in the hills behind Ushuaia in one of the hotels. And your morning view before we left out on that evening was to look at this particular view from there in the morning. Beautiful sunrise, beautiful sunset. We thought we're in for good weather. And as you do, the Drake Passage can be interesting and fun, and I'll talk about that again. But as I said, any one time you'll see 3 ships in harbour, and here they are. There's 3 different ships, very different styles of ships in there, from the World Explorer to the Ocean Albatross, and then in that sort of turquoise colour in the background is the ship that you'll see. We're on the Sylvia Earle, and there she is up close and personal. The reason I've taken this shot so you can see the newest design feature that a lot of the ships are moving to, and that's the crossbow design. And that's the reason they have these ships designed like this now is that they help to keep the ship as stable as possible in rough water, but also they cut through the waves, so giving you a smoother ride. And it's true, because we hit some wild weather, and as you do in the Drake Passage, you'll hit wild weather and smooth weather throughout, because it's a large piece of water and you've got 2 days to cross it, but it gives you a fairly smooth ride. The first intro into our cabins shows the way that they've set up. Every cabin has a different photo in the background. The cabins are a very good size, separate bath and shower and toilet. Everybody that travels with Aurora gets given their waterproof and warm outer layer. You'll see it folded up on the bed there. The ones that Aurora give you actually are very good in terms of they give you 2 layers. So there's a thermal layer you can take off and on if it gets a little bit warm, but you can also wear that separately on a not so windy day or not so wet day. And then showing you some of the open deck space. So here, this is where we met all our expedition team. So the very first morning you meet the expedition team and they introduce themselves and they talk to you about what they do. They'll have expedition experts from geologists to marine biologists to historians to all sorts on board. And it's great because they will do lectures throughout the crossing periods. They'll talk about things. And each ship tends to have a photography expert as well, who comes on board and gives you little tips and tricks and shows you little ways to take photos differently. But probably one of the best things about it is that you don't need to have a super duper SLR camera. I mean, it helps because you take fantastic photos with them, but they also teach you how to take photos with your iPhone. So it's actually quite a clever little way that they do it so that you can actually get those interesting shots and videos as you're traveling. So our first day started with some dusky. Oh, you just see them there very briefly, but watch out, they will duck back through. So we had dusky dolphins cruising through the direct passage, and they popped up and surfed the bow of the ship and the side of the ship for a good half hour on that first morning or first afternoon. And you see, there you go, coming through there. I'll come back to the duskies, but they are prevalent in this particular patch of water in the Drake Passage, and you'll see them everywhere, and they're very happy, playful, joyful things. Now, we talked about the Drake Passage. There's 2 forms of weather you get there. They call it the Drake Shake. As you'll see here, we hit some big water, some big waves, but the ship was super stable as it's traveling. 2, the Drake Lake, and you get days like this. So this was all actually in the same day. So you'll see that the weather changes quite dramatically, and we get beautiful calm seas and fantastic vistas, especially at sunset. Once we had 2 days of crossing, we started to get towards Antarctica, and we started to see the big tabular icebergs floating off. At one point, I think I counted about 15 to 20 icebergs the size of this out in the ocean before we hit to the main things. And you can see the size of these things as you get past them. It's worth sitting on the deck, open deck space, taking photos, because you can see different angles, different shapes, different colors at all different times. I think I took about 15 shots of this particular iceberg, and at all slightly different angles and things like that. And you see it at wonderful angles and different lights. And then we hit Antarctica proper. As you say, beautiful calm day. We have a bit of weather of all sorts. And this is Deception Island, which is a caldera, a volcanic caldera. So it's volcanic inside. Fantastic cruise on in. As you're coming in, you get your first lot of sea life and bird life. I think that's a snowy petrel. No, I might not. It's a petrel of some sort following us. And then we came in and we did some beautiful hikes up to the hill. You can see the tracks for all the people back there. We get fantastic vistas back over the caldera there. You can see the ship in the background. And then you've got bits of history. So this is an old whaling station. So it's like the island is taking it back. I mean, there's a couple of the old whaling boats there, and you'll see just parked up next to it there is a crab-eater seal, actually, just sitting there sleeping away. And if you turn the corner and you look, again, you'll see something completely different. So this is the key thing, is always keep your eyes open, but you can see the beautiful sort of how the island is taking itself back. And then we started to run into all the Gentoo penguins up there. Hopefully this video works. These guys have just come off, and you can see the smoke coming off, or the sulfur. So this is volcanic sand or volcanic land. So the water is actually quite warm here. So that's why the penguins love it. I think this little spot's a little bit warmer for them. But they just come out from a swim, having a look around, having a bit of a chat before they wandered off. We started to see hundreds and hundreds of them. You do a lot of Zodiac cruising as well. So you head out towards the island. So this is one of our Zodiac guys who was actually from Sweden, but then grew up in North America and had some amazing stories about crossing the Antarctic Channel on a tall ship and things like that. So your guides, it's worth having a chat to them the whole time. They have got some amazing stories to tell you about things that they've done in their lifetimes. And it's just great to hear their stories. But you can see the beautiful icebergs that we see in the background, and they change color and shape again everywhere you go. So you're just having a look at these things. So just giving you a bit of a view of what it's like to be in the Zodiac. And this is how you get on and off the ship. The Zodiacs, there's helpers on board to always get you on and off the ship. But this gives you a time lapse on of what it's like. This was about probably a 5-minute ride, and I think you're going to get this in about 11 seconds. You can see how they follow, and they come around to the back of the ship. Everyone's waiting, and then you pull in to those little docks there, and where people get you in and out. And there's always someone there to greet you. They tow up the boat, and you get in and out quite easily. But the main thing we were there for was hopefully to see these guys, and colonies of them everywhere. Going early season, there's a lot of them coming up to find their nesting site, waiting for the ice to melt fully so that they can lay their eggs and produce their chicks. So this is one of our first mornings, and you can see the sheer numbers of them there. We also had snowy shearbills that always stowed away on the ship, got a ride from point to point, and you'll see them floating around everywhere. They're very animated little birds, that's for sure. And then just wandering through. So there, we've got our gentoos traveling around. We saw a couple of adelies and chinstraps as well on our travels, but you'll see how they get around, either walking or, especially in the snow, they use their belly and they surf. So as I said, we're early season, so we got weather of all types. And probably the best thing about it is that we had a beautiful snowstorm that came through. It wasn't scary at all. It was actually fantastic. It was beautiful, soft snow. We probably laid about a foot of snow on the ship, which melted as we moved around and things like that. But it just gives you an idea that you're seeing this pure countryside, this pure in its best form. And then the next day we went out and found some more. And you can see all the tracks there. They're not human tracks, they're penguin tracks. So that's the penguin highways. And those guys you can see in the distance there are getting up, and they found their spot that they want to be. And it's just showing you how they move around. So as you see up there, the two guys walking, the third guy at the back, just pushing along in his belly. He's got to catch up to them eventually. And they can only do this in the snow. Obviously, they can't do that when they're traveling by foot. And then everyone asks, well, why do they waddle so much like that? Well, the weird thing about penguins is that their legs are all permanently bent, so they waddle like that, and you can't do anything about it. That's if they stretch their legs, they'd probably be another 30 or 40 centimeters taller. But we cruised around a small area by Zodiac called the Iceberg Graveyard. And it's because the icebergs get stuck. It's very shallow water. They get blown in there by the wind and they get stuck. And then they slowly melt over hundreds of years. But you get these fantastic patterns. And around every corner, you find beautiful seal shots. So this is a crab eater there. We saw colonies of crab eaters all over the place. This particular guy was pretty photogenic, just sitting there with the mountains in the background, the ice in the foreground. He popped his head up and did the right things by us. But you see them there. There's about, I think there's 6 there in that thing. And you can see that crystal clear water beforehand. And this is one of the bonuses of having the photographers aboard. They teach you how to shoot the full angle as well as taking in the close-ups. We went into the Lemaire Channel and we could not see anything. The Lemaire Channel is probably one of the most beautiful scenes of Antarctica, and is probably one of the highlights when you're doing a peninsular cruise, because it's a very narrow channel there you cruise through. You've got these fantastic rocky outcrops. As we came in, we couldn't see anything. We were hoping to go all the way through. What we did was we turned around and went back out. So this was all within one day. So it was full snow on the way in. On the way out, we got this beautiful still scenery. And then we go Snowy Petrel, just getting a ride. And then hopefully this will show you, all those things. The other thing is that as we cruised out, we were being followed. We didn't realise, and you just have to have a look around every now and then and see what's behind you. And so it's all the penguins porpoising as they're heading to shore to find their nesting sites. So I always say when you go to Antarctica, look everywhere. Look up, look left, look behind, look forward. There's a bit of history down here. We've got Port Lockroy, and they have a small hut just near Port Lockroy, which was opened when we were there. So we could go in and have a look around. And this is like a living museum. Port Lockroy is run by the British Antarctic Society. It's one of those spots where you can actually post a letter from. It will take 3 to 6 months to get home to you from there, because that goes via the Falkland Islands back to the UK, then back to wherever you might happen to be, or whoever you've posted your postcard to. But you get in here and you see time stood still. There's magazines from I think these are from the 70s, some of these magazines. And inside the hut as well, there's cans of things that it's straight out of the 50s. So that's Port Lockroy. That's the main site there. And as you'll see, you get these fantastic icebergs. Port Lockroy is the size of 2 football fields, by the way. It's on a small island. There's more penguins on there, and there's about 5 people that permanently live there over the summer. And they're there essentially to preserve the historical artifacts that are there. But you get these fantastic shots, and if you do it right and you get a close-up, so I'm talking about these photos where you take further distance close-up shots, and you get these fantastic views of different ice sculptures. Near Port Lockroy, and this is probably one of the big bonuses, is they had huge guillemot reserves as well as penguins, and they were nesting together on the one scene. So we got to see a few fights, a few people stealing bits of branches to make their nests, and going at this time of year, you get to see that. You also get a chance to do some citizen science on board, and this is great because they do all sorts of different things, from testing ice to this one was actually using satellites and looking at the cloud structure and what global warming potentially is doing. And it's really interesting stuff to do. And what you find and what you do, they put up online into the citizen science. And it could be from things like looking at whale tails and things like that. But of course, when we hit Antarctica, what better way to do it than we pulled up one afternoon. It was a sunny day. It was a great idea to have a bit of champagne on our Zodiacs. And it's just a nice little surprise that they throw at you. There's all sorts of little surprises throughout the trips that they throw at you. So it's just enjoyable to watch. And then probably moving towards our last few days there, we started it again to see slightly different weather patterns. And this is why I took these next 2 shots in particular. You can see it's beautiful sunny in the distance with the storm clouds starting to roll in, but we got a chance to zoom back over this view, and it just shows you how dramatic and how real this whole destination is. Cruising around again, one more time lapse for you, just to show you that sort of last trip back to the ship that we did. There it is there, the Sylvia Earle. We can see it in its glory coming through, and you just get these beautiful views coming around, getting around the ship. And hopefully perfectly calm days like this every time. And even if it's less calm, they're very good at getting you on board and off the ship. Our last morning, so we came back over the Drake, and again, we had smooth sailing, a little bit of rough water, but this is the very last morning before we got off. Woke up to breakfast, and we had the dusky dolphins there, surfing the waves right next to us. This is while we're having breakfast. Then a little bit later on, we had, I think we had petrels and terns flying all around the ship, and they were just playing. It was almost like they were playing chasey everywhere. And you can see them there, and they dart all over the ship. And there was one wandering albatross too that we saw. Hard to get a good shot of it, but that's the other side of it. When you are on the ship, it's on the crossings. Definitely go to the back of the ships, look out, because that's where you see a lot of the birds chasing you. And then one last shot of a penguin, even though it's not a real penguin. There's a small hut when you get off the ship. Look out for this, because it's a beautiful piece of art of a chinstrap penguin that they've done there. It's worth having a look at in Ushuaia when you're looking around. So, in recap, why go to the Antarctic Peninsula? Well, hopefully you get to see these wonderful tabular icebergs, which we saw on the crossing on the way over. If you can move further down into the Weddell Sea, you'll get sort of these ice breaking. This is a beautiful shot at 4 a.m. in the morning, I think it was, just as the sun was rising. Every corner there is something to see. We came around an iceberg, and then bang, there was a colony of penguins just sitting on the icebergs. So those type of things are there. If you move further out to South Georgia and the Falkland Islands, you get the big penguin colonies there. And as you'll see on this one, there's millions of penguins in the background. Take it all in. Sit down, watch the world go by, and the penguins, the rule is that you can't go within 5 meters of penguin, but the penguin generally will come up and be pretty inquisitive and have a look around you. You just keep your distance and stay away, but it's worth just sitting or standing and taking it all in. Hopefully you see this morning salute to the suns from the chin straps, or the porpoising through the ocean, or you go for a little bit of a hike on one of the beaches. And the guys, as I said, they will just follow you and look at you. The ultimate selfie shot destination, I'll be honest with you, this is where you can really go to town and take a fantastic selfie of yourself and your loved ones, and then send it to all your friends. And then always look out the back of the ship, looking for the albatross. As I said, we saw one beautiful one, didn't get a good shot, but I stole this from someone else. And then as you're going through, you've got the seals. You have crab eater seals, you have Weddell seals, moving to the leopard seals that you'll see from place to place to the elephant seals. These are the big boys, the 2-ton boys that you'll see all over the place. So that is Antarctica in a nutshell. Best way to do it is by expedition small ship. And I like to finish with this one beautiful reflection shot. So it's a shot where you can try and take the best image you can. And this one is just amazing because you've got Snow Hill in the foreground, you've got the beautiful reflection on ground, and then a small iceberg just coming in to break up the shot. So that was my trip to Antarctica. Highly recommend going any time of the year. The season really runs from early November through to March. You will see more penguin action, icebergs, snow to the water's edge in early season as the penguins are coming into colony. They will start laying their eggs later into the season. So moving to December, into January, the eggs start to hatch. And then you'll start to see the chicks. And then later in the season, once all the phytoplankton have grown to a good level, you'll see the whales starting to come in and they'll be feeding in their droves. So if you really want to see the whales, then the best time probably is going to be March, February, March. But for sheer numbers of penguins, as early a season as you can go, November is probably the best option for the. As you saw, the weather is different every moment of every day, and you get some beautiful crystal clear days, and you get some wet and wheelie and even snowy days like we did. But it's all part of going to probably the last true great wilderness left on Earth. That's it from me. Oh, tough. It's a tough call for the one highlight. Probably the day where we found a couple of really big colonies of Gentoo penguins, and they were creating those highways everywhere. They were walking around trying to find their best spot where they figured they were going to lay their eggs and do that. And it was, I reckon, close to nearly 1,000 penguins on
Wow.
different spots of this island. So they were everywhere. And then we were watching them as they were porpoising in and coming into the land.
Ooh.
Most of the companies now these days always start with a night in Ushuaia, which is great. It helps you get over that jet lag, but it also gives you a bit of a chance to look around Ushuaia, which is a beautiful town. And I always recommend, if you can, go and spend 2 or 3 days in Buenos Aires on the way down, just to break up that long flight from Australia and New Zealand in particular. But also you can get your fix of good red wine and good steak there as well. And Buenos Aires as a city is a beautiful city to wander around, look at, and just take it all in.
And you mentioned some of the activities, including the citizen science. What were some of the other activities available? Was there kayaking and hiking and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we had different groups that did everyone gets a chance to walk. But on some of the companies, and we had one group that did a bit of kayaking, and it is weather dependent. It has to be pretty calm to do the kayaking. So they got out probably 3 or 4 days because there was some windy days there, but where they did, they absolutely had a ball. They were chasing porpoising penguins as well, or maybe it was more so the porpoising penguins were chasing them when they were paddling. So it's a bit of an experience when you're at water level on that. But also with Aurora, they do 3 departures at the beginning of the season where if you're a very keen skier or snowboarder, you can actually go and ski and snowboard in Antarctica, which no one else offers. So it's very different. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. The word of warning, you have to be good. You have to know what to do with either sort of telemark or mountain style skiing. And there are no lifts to get you to the mountain. You have to put skins on your skis and you have to walk up.
Yes.
So, but the scenes of those guys coming down out of the sort of clouds to finish up skiing at the end of the thing was pretty amazing. So they got to do that, and they got to see a bit of the wildlife, probably not as much. So if you're a real wildlife nut, do the standard cruise. If you want to try something a bit different, then you take the option to do that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there were some options as well to do some snorkeling if you wish to. It's pretty cold. And the main sights and sounds of the snorkeling are the wonderful sea creatures underneath. They hopefully get up close to seeing some of the phytoplankton and planktons coming to life and things like that. but there's some beautiful crustacean creatures in the shallows.
Mhm.
And if you're lucky, you might even have a penguin swim by.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that was probably, it's about perfect. It was a perfect sort of just over 2 week holiday. So that was ideal. The only thing I've done differently, and it's there on offer, is if you wanted to get out to see those sort of big king penguin colonies and a bit of the history of the Falkland Islands, to see where Shackleton, one of the great pioneers of Antarctic travel, is buried, then I would extend and have an extra week to do the Falklands in South Georgia. But that I can do that on the next trip down there.
Next
So
trip,
that's the bonus
yes.
of that. Just get down there as soon as you can.
Yeah.
With the global changing of the world and things like that, it's worth visiting, and it is one of the last true great wildernesses left there.
Yeah.
So it is purely amazing. It is completely different to anywhere else you will see anywhere. So
Yeah.
definitely get down there soon.
Cool. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye.